Hello everybody, it's Merlin here, and I'm going to give you what's hopefully going to be a fairly brief movie review. I feel like I've slacked off a bit on some of the more recent big summer movies, mostly because I couldn't see them with my friends due to conflicting work schedules, but since I have the motivation, I'm going to talk about Independence Day Resurgence. That's obviously the sequel, the long-awaited sequel, I guess, to the popcorn summer classic of the mid-90s. Now, a little bit of history. The reason why I actually had some hype and excitement for this movie is because, honestly, when I was a kid growing up, Independence Day was like one of those movies that my family would gather together and watch and just have fun watching. I mean, it was a big, dumb, silly action movie, but it had enough heart and energy and silliness and honestly some pretty cool action that it made it a fairly enjoyable movie. I mean, I'll admit that, there are a lot of problems with it, but I felt like it was kind of self-aware of how silly it was, that enough of that kind of balanced out with a lot of the dumb stuff. So, you could just turn off your brain and for the most part enjoy it. And I even rewatched it not too long ago to get in preparation for this movie. And yeah, there are some dumb moments for sure, but it's still kind of fun to watch. It's definitely not a great movie, but there is a kind of nostalgic joy I have to it. And it still kind of remains there a little bit. Now, this movie, just to give you an idea, right when this movie ended, one of the first things that came up, of course, was the screenplay credits, and I saw it had 5 writers. 5 writers, and generally speaking, in the tradition of Hollywood, a script written by 5 people is not a good sign. Too many cooks in the kitchen, too many ideas conflicting, not enough focus. But on the other hand, you'd think you'd have enough ideas there to come up with something. I mean, Emmerich obviously has had enough hand in his own movies. Dean Devlin, some experience, and I know that James Vanderbilt's another guy that I've seen before with some experience. So it's unfortunate, but you could definitely tell there's so many ideas there. But the strange thing about it is, it feels like it's so thinly written. Basically, the plot of this movie is extremely simple. I mean, the aliens come back after 20 years for some reason. They decide to strike now, and people have celebrated the victory, and it's the 20th anniversary of it, of course. Cute reference to the movie, obviously. And a lot of the people have kind of settled in their own ways. Will Smith's character is killed, though it's never really talked about in the movie. Apparently in some of the advertising leading up to it they mention it, but they never outright say it in the movie, though it's heavily implied and made obvious that his character did die. And his son is a character in the movie as well. But Jeff Goldblum's character is like the main consultant about the alien technology because we've fused with it and with our own technology to advance ourselves, and of course all of mankind's united, which is cool. But the aliens come back, and apparently this time we learned that they want our core, like the core of our planet, I guess to power their ships maybe. Of course, it's never really explained. I mean, it's I was okay with them just stealing our resources, but it kind of opens up a lot of the issues I have with this movie, which is the fact that, admittedly the first movie was dumb, and this movie is dumb, if not dumber, in comparison, but there are other aspects that made the first movie so fun that aren't as well executed here, that it makes all the plot holes and just weak script stuff so much more obvious. Like, for instance, you're telling me that after 20 years, okay, let's just say it takes them 20 years to, scout out our planet originally and then come out here to specifically get us, and this is a spoiler for later in the movie, but you'd assume, okay, statistically speaking, there's sure enough a way that they can get resources from some other planet if they've done it so many times before that they just want to pick on us. And after we beat them so badly last time, you think they just would decide to pick on someone else. But okay, they hold a grudge, whatever. No, we learn later on that there's more going on. But anyway, there's a lot of little things. Like, for instance, Jeff Goldblum is basically like the hero that saved mankind before, and yet nobody listens to him. Like, a probe comes back, let's just shoot at it. Even though Jeff Goldblum's saying, no, I think this is a bad idea. The president doesn't listen to him. And of course they have Liam Hemsworth's character, who's basically the main character in the movie. It's kind of unclear. Another weakness of this movie is that you don't really have a good sense of your characters. They're introduced to us so quickly and with very flimsy backstory, and honestly with kind of mixed acting and directing, so we don't care about them as much. They're not as well defined as they were in the first film. So I guess Liam Hemsworth is the main character, and he's introduced as just being kind of a goofball who's reckless, and I was thinking, I hope he's not the main savior of humanity, because he's established right off the bat that he's not really worthy of that, but he basically is. And you've got Bill Pullman's character as the president coming back, and he's apparently been suffering from issues dealing with what happened and worrying about them coming back, which I guess kind of makes sense, but considering how awesome his character was in the first movie, I didn't quite buy it. But, he has a daughter and kind of obviously has some relationship with the Hemsworth character and Will Smith's character's son, who are all fighter pilots. And all the fighter pilots are like 20, in their early 20s. I'm like, why are there no actual adults that are the advanced fighter pilots? They're all kids, so I didn't believe that. And there are some issues like, Liam Hemsworth's character, in a test, he almost got the Will Smith son character killed, and that caused a grudge for the Will Smith son character, but they get over it really quickly. And, there are old characters that die in this movie, but, you see them so little, and it's done so offhandedly, it has no impact when people do die, and that's kind of annoying. I don't know. It just, there's a lot of issues with the movie. A lot of plot issues, a lot of character issues that are pretty big, and hard to ignore. However, there are some things that are kind of salvageable. That's why I can't say that even though this movie is dumb and I felt myself forgetting it as I was leaving the theater, there were things about it that made it mostly watchable. First of all, the effects are pretty cool. One of the issues I have with this movie, in addition to that though, is that you'd think that with the sequel they would want to make things bigger, which they imply they do with bigger ships and literally a bigger alien queen, because apparently they're a hive mind and she's a giant version of them. Okay, but the way it's executed, like the final climax, is not as exciting, or it doesn't have the same amount of scale as in the first movie. And one of the things about the first movie that was done well is certain scenes did have scale. They did have some ominous nature to them, like when the aliens first show up. There's one scene I really love, probably my favorite scene in the original movie, which has some horror elements, when they go to Area 51 and one of the aliens breaks loose and takes control of Brent Spiner, that's Data's character, and uses him to telekinetically and telepathically just manipulate and communicate with Bill Pullman's president. And he's like, what do you want from us? Nothing. It's like, we don't want peace. What do you want us to do? Die. I mean, like, that is ominous. Like, I love that. And of course the alien, was in the smoke, and you only saw a little bit of him, and he made creepy sounds, and he had that dark, deep voice, and it was frightening. And of course he was practical effects, which he looked real. And all the aliens, you see more of them, kind of, but not really. There's not a lot of close-ups, even though they're all CG, which made me mad. Even when they try to literally recreate certain scenes like that one, it's like a lot of other scenes in this movie, it's so rushed and ill-defined that it doesn't work quite as well. It's really unfortunate. Getting back to some positives, I feel like I'm just bashing this movie constantly. There are some things, like I will say that the performances, they're a bit mixed, but Liam Hemsworth's character does go through a little bit of an arc, and he does get better. I mean, that's very light to say, but he does get better as a character, though everything, of course, with him is totally predictable. Jeff Goldblum is being Jeff Goldblum, so he's fine. Though, to be honest, it feels like his character is a little out of place, but that's more of a writing issue this time around. Bill Pullman, I feel like his best acting days are a little behind him, honestly. Like, I like the guy. He's been in some decent roles. I mean, I loved him in David Lynch's Lost Highway. It's honestly probably his best performance. Even though I'm a Lynch fan, I can honestly say that. He's very good in that. And he was fun in Independence Day. I still think he's one of the best movie presidents just because of his epic speech-making skills. But no, that was fun. He's playing a little different character in this one, having come from a different position, and I'm okay with that. There's also, William Fichtner through the chain of command basically getting all wiped out. He becomes the president, and I think he's a good actor, very underrated. I like him. The lovely Micah Monroe plays Bill Pullman's daughter from the first movie, who's also a fighter pilot. And, she's lovely, and she was she's a good actress. I thought she was really great in one of my favorite movies from recent years, one of the great horror movies, It Follows. She was the main girl in that. I liked her a lot in that. In this one, she's just, unfortunately, I think that might be a directing issue. But yeah, this movie's just filled with silly plot holes. Like, okay, a great scene in the movie. There's a lot of little moments of humor that I just found myself laughing at. Like, just obviously moments where it knows that it's tongue-in-cheek, which is kind of the spirit of the original movie. Like, for instance, probably my favorite little tiny mini plot in the movie involves like these undersea miner guys or deep sea explorers who find the ship with like $100 million of gold, and they're still trying to get it even though there's a planetary invasion going on, and they're literally seated right next to one of the main ships that's drilling into the core of the planet, and through the shortwave radio, they're somehow able to communicate with Area 51, and they're all getting drunk, and they're like, oh, well, the world's ending, we might as well just drink. And one guy communicates with Area 51, and they're like, hey, could you please monitor the alien ship for what they're doing? They're like, oh, yeah, sure, for $100 million. And of course, they're like, done. And then they all just start scrambling to start doing it. I'm like, that was kind of funny. But then it brings up the question, their main alien ship that's drilling into the planet is sitting right next to this little group of people that's obviously monitoring them. There's no aliens on the ship that can just look over and say, hey, there's some humans there. Just kill them. There's just a lot of huge plot holes like that are so obvious. It's like, I just don't think there were that many in the original film. With every, fun moment, for instance, Jeff Goldblum's dad, his character's back, and he kind of is there, and he survives being in the thick of danger twice in two ridiculous scenarios. He somehow lives, which is fine, I guess, but it's just really? It's, as ridiculous as the movie is, it's like you can only suspend your belief so much. Oh, man, I don't know. This movie was a real mixed bag, and I do apologize for this review not being the most organized, but I feel like if I start to write it down, I'll just lose my enthusiasm and energy, because it is late. But, I don't know. I definitely cannot say this movie was good, and believe me, I went into this movie with, relatively low expectations. I expected it to be dumb and fun, and I feel like parts of the movie are in the spirit of the original, the parts that are kind of silly and self-referential and, just kind of dumb and, but they're enjoyable. Like, the visuals aren't bad, and the acting is okay from some of the people. The character stuff is there is some character stuff, but it's bad. And before I forget, probably the biggest thing in this movie to actually change the game and potentially expand the universe is we learn that there is a whole nother race that is the main enemy of this race of aliens that's been fighting them for a long time. The last member of their race, which is basically this android, they're a robotic race. It's come down to basically give us a chance, all this information, and they're pursuing it because it's like their ultimate enemy. Think of it like the Daleks versus the Doctor. It's that kind of concept. It turns out that what it's been doing for years and years is finding all these different races that have gotten wiped out by these people and actually taking them to a secret planet and training them with its technology to build a resistance against them, which is kind of awesome. I'm like, just the old school sci-fi aspect of it, I think that's really cool. I actually like that. But of course, the way it's introduced into the movie is completely unsubtle and with a little build-up, and it's just so obvious, constantly throwing exposition. And also Jeff Goldblum stating things for the audience that are so obvious, oh, it was a trap there for us. They were baiting us, or oh, they're forming a circle to protect her, or oh, you gotta shoot it there. That's obviously the weak spot. And I can't tell you how many times watching this movie I'm rolling my eyes and saying no shit. It's so obvious. It is a little painful, and basically, this is my review in summary. This movie is speckled with elements of the first film that are fun, but it's lacking the defined, interesting characters. It's lacking the energetic performances for the most part. It's honestly lacking a better plot, and I honestly miss some of the old special effects and in-camera work from the original film. I mean, I know that it's understandable that there would be more CGI now, but I just, certain scenes I didn't think needed it at all. Some of the actors were having fun, but, I feel like if you really turn your brain off, it's still not going to save the average viewer for this movie. I just think it's a little too dumb, but it has speckles of the original film. I don't know if it's going to, wager a new movie in the future. I mean, I doubt it because I don't think it did very well at the box office, which is understandable. But, I mean, I don't know. This is one of those movies that they've been throwing around for a while, and I was really kind of excited for it. I was anticipating it, but it's mostly pretty disappointing. I mean, it's not the worst thing I've ever seen, or anything like that. I mean, there was definitely some effort put into it, but there was just too much of a lack of focus, and it took itself way too seriously. I guess if you want to see it, it's worth seeing, but I'd wait to watch it on Netflix in a couple months or rent it from Redbox. It's worth $1 or $2, but I wouldn't pay full price with 3D glasses and the popcorn and stuff like I did. I mean, I wish that the person that I met with hadn't done that, but whatever. It was mixed. So I'd give it probably Probably like a D plus, maybe a C minus, but that'd be generous. It's like there were good things in the movie, but overall it's definitely flawed, very flawed, unfortunately. But if you guys saw it, let me